Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's FPC Radio Live. It is Friday, September the 16th, 2022, and we are just rolling into week 2 here in the NFL. Sunday Night Football last night, or I'm sorry, Thursday Night Football last night, because obviously last night was Thursday, not Sunday. We saw the Chargers almost squeak out a upset victory over the Chiefs, but unfortunately a pick six, a 99-yard pick six, changed all of that. So, John, disappointing for our guy Justin Herbert. I mean, obviously the news coming out of the game was obviously the injury, but played a pretty good game. But the pick six, I mean, that's devastating play for a team that looked like they were going to be able to kind of withstand that Kansas City Chiefs storm.
I think they're better than the Chiefs. I think their defense is better. I think the quarterbacks are close. I mean, pick either one. They're both outstanding. I think the Chargers have really addressed the offensive line, give an edge to Kansas City in coaching because Andy Reid is, I think, the most creative offensive mind in the sport and has so much experience. I think the Chargers are better top to bottom, but they've got to get that stink of the Chargers off them, right? They outplayed Kansas City last night, and then you get a pick six. You're going in for the go-ahead score in a tie game. Instead, now you're behind a touchdown within about 15 seconds. So that was a really, really tough way to lose the game. And we'll see what Herbert's injury is. It looks like it's ribs, and those are very, very delicate. And, you know, one thing that frightened me on Twitter is, you know, he may need an injection into the ribs. And I'm like, well, the last time that happened with a quarterback for the Chargers, it didn't really end well. Right. I mean, you know, that's how he actually got his start. His very first start was in his second game as a rookie when the prior quarterback was injected, and, you know, it didn't go well before the game injection to the ribs. So, just another tough loss by the Chargers, and, you know, a big game because, you know, if you're going to fight for that number 1 overall seed, you're going to have to win that division. And Kansas City has a slight leg up, but obviously it's only week 2. But entertaining game, and those two teams are two of the best in the business.
Yeah, look, I mean, this wasn't my biggest concern with the Chargers, and it has been for a while, is that this team is going to be so good, but their coach is going to get in the way. And I thought last night he was Brandon Staley. He was fine. I mean, he didn't do anything like there was some attempts on fourth down, but you know, these weren't these reckless, I'm going to go for it because that's what I do type of mentality, which, you know, depending on who you speak to, it's either the players love it or it's reckless. And I tend to lean towards more reckless when you're just going for it to go for it. But there is opportunistic and strategic times to go for it. Like I said, when you're fourth and short inside opponent, you know, your opponent's territory, and you're obviously out of field goal range, there's opportunity to go for it, which again outweigh, I think, the benefit of punting it or whatever. Either way, I agree with you. I think they looked better for the most part. I mean, the entire first half I felt was pretty well handled by the Chargers, but the score just didn't, you know, you felt like they should be up more, but they really weren't. And, you know, that's always a bad feeling when you're going up against a good team, which the Chiefs are. But to your point, though, this isn't a situation where the Chargers are, you know, trying to get over the hump, or like they almost got them, but in the end, the Chiefs come out. No, this was, in a way, a very impressive outing, just a very disappointing outcome. Because again, I mean, you're talking about a team that was a yard away from going up 7 points, and then in a blink of an eye, literally, they're down 7, and you know they just couldn't overcome it. I think the Justin Herbert injury didn't do any favors for the Chargers, because late in that game he was obviously hampered quite a bit. But this was a team that, like, even after that pick six, the Chiefs couldn't put them away, and there were some interesting offensive possessions where it just didn't really feel like the Chiefs had any sort of rhythm or anything like that. So I mean, even after that pick six, the Chargers still had a decent opportunity to get themselves back in and win this game. But at the end, I think the injury kind of it got them. And look, the overturned interceptions, that was a momentum killer for this team.
Absolutely. I mean, the Chargers are up 10. Asante Samuel Jr., who you nailed it yesterday. Man, I feel like I'm watching his dad. It's like a flashback to 2005 or whatever. When I see him out on the field, and he's a really good corner.
2007 Super Bowl 42 flashback, but
unfortunately, it was ruled an interception, then overturned, and it was close. And then the interception was overturned because of the defensive pass interference. Tough call, but more times than not, you're going to call it on the defense, not the offense. Yeah, I mean, those were killer because if Asante Samuel Jr. holds on to that ball, the Chargers have great field position inside Kansas City territory with a 10-point lead, and Justin Herbert literally cooking at that point. Maybe you turn this into a blowout. That's how much that game turned on that play, and then obviously the pick six was the biggest play of the night. Well, the Chargers can certainly play with that team without question, and they can beat them.
Also consider the dropped interception in the end zone.
By Asante Samuel Jr.
Who just read the pass, read the play completely. Patrick Mahomes clearly didn't see him. And I mean, it literally hit Asante Samuel in the chest, and he just couldn't hold on to it. Which, look, and this is this is why I thought it was again kind of ridiculous. The reaction predictable but ridiculous all the same to week one, and certainly the Chiefs' performance in week one, because I looked at it and I said, look, I mean, it's impressive, no doubt about it. 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but you're going up against a bad Arizona team. And I thought what we saw last night against a very good Chargers team who just unfortunately could not convert those turnovers, because, I mean, I saw Patrick Mahomes dying to throw an interception. There was, again, what that first one, I believe it was the right call. I mean, the guy got there early. You're going to call it pass interference on that 9 out of 10 times. But it doesn't negate some of the poor decisions, like the one where he hucked the ball up deep. I think it was the second one that got called back. That was just a poor decision that he got bailed out on. And then again, we mentioned the poor throw in the end zone that should have got picked off. The pass that did get picked off, which again, I don't know. I can't remember what the penalty was that negated that one. But there was just, it's why I caution people to not go overboard in this week. What was the narrative after week one? There's no one close to Patrick Mahomes in this league.
Right.
No, there are plenty. And like you said earlier, you can make an argument. I'm not going to do it yet, because you got to give respect where respect's due. And Mahomes does have the MVP in the Super Bowl. But I mean, Justin Herbert does a lot of the same things that people go absolutely bonkers over when it comes to Mahomes. And I'm like, if there was a level amount of appreciation, and this is why I thought when we talked about it the other day, this idea that he's the most disrespected quarterback ever is just outrageous. I mean, that's just an outrageous statement to make, because you could argue it's the exact opposite. This guy gets more, hype over normal everyday quarterback play than anyone in the league, because I'm looking and I'm seeing Justin Herbert doing the same rollouts, the same awkward arm angles and stuff like that. And then also a far better player in the pocket. Like, that's something to me that sticks out incredibly. And that is, I think Justin Herbert's a far better passer than Patrick Mahomes. And we see him, I made a comment, and it kind of, in a way, almost came back immediately and bit me in the ass, John, because I was being a little bit snarky, because the broadcast asked, "What?" Just a little bit, John. Well, it was on a play in which Mahomes got sacked or rushed or hit backwards, and the commentator was like, "What can Patrick do?" Well, I said, "Don't run backwards. Step up in the pocket."
Right.
Well, the very next play, he stepped up in the pocket and threw a touchdown pass. So I was kind of, in a way, like I was trying to take a shot, got immediately, rebuffed, but at the same time kind of proved my point, because, we see him all the time, bail out on these plays and start running backwards or running side to side, which makes for a great reaction on Twitter, because everyone's enamored with that. Everyone thinks that's great quarterback play, and it's really not. So when he steps up in the pocket, I think that's obviously a better option, because it keeps everything in control. And I think that's something Justin Herbert does, is manipulate and play the pocket a lot better. And I think we saw that yesterday in a few instances.
Well, all I can think of is maybe Patrick Mahomes took your advice and then quickly thereafter threw that touchdown pass, because that was sweet.
Yeah,
that was a beautiful throw. Like you said, he stepped up in the pocket. So maybe he was, maybe he carries a phone with him saw it on Twitter, and said, you know what, this guy Ian knows quarterbacking, and I'm going to listen to him. Exactly. I mean, there will be. I mean, if Kevin Durant was a quarterback, yeah, I'm sure he would have a phone with him, in the pocket, checking to see what people were saying about him. But yeah, no, I mean, I think Mahomes is wonderful. I also think that Mahomes has gone to 4 straight AFC Championship games and went to 2 Super Bowls and won it, so he's more decorated than Herbert. I think Herbert has as much talent as Patrick Mahomes, but he hasn't made it to the playoffs. It is also a kind of a charisma thing that Mahomes does have that, right? It's just he seems to play with this joy. Again, I've compared him to Steph Curry. Like, they're out there having a blast. That's why a lot of the 12, 13, 14-year-olds.
He looks confused 90% of the time. You ever see his reactions on camera? He looks confused and puzzled and
well, that's a good way to go through life sometimes, though. Maybe it doesn't, there's no burden there. Whereas Justin Herbert's about as chill a dude as you're ever going to see, right? I mean, that guy, like, he threw the pick 6 and he went to the sideline and that was it. And he just, okay, I'll go back out there and try to win the game regardless. And then he's got the rib issues and he's still ripping the ball down the field and making some great throws. They're completely different personalities. That's what I kind of like about these young quarterbacks. They're all different. They're not cookie cutters, right? Joe Burrow's the ultimate, like, I'm cool, right? Like, I threw 4 interceptions and I'm going to keep battling. And that's kind of pretty good.
I was going to say, I mean, that's part of the social media era too. I mean, because they all have personalities online and on Twitter, and like, you get when they go up and have press conferences, they'll have like snarky remarks or comments and stuff like that because they know it's going to get talked about on Twitter and all that. And like I said, there's this Chiefs fans hate Pro Football Focus right now because sometimes it's not so favorable towards Patrick Mahomes when you think it should be. And look, I mean, sometimes it's puzzling. Like, all right, not everything always makes sense. And like I said, I mean, this is just that's how football is analyzed because there is no this number tells you exactly what happened metric that it just doesn't exist. So there's always going to be some gray area with all this stuff. But there's this campaign against Pro Football Focus, and I get it. I understand people are going to not like it when it doesn't help their cause. But he made a comment last night about one of the dropped interceptions. It's like, oh well, I guess PFF is going to grade me poorly. And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, I understand that. Yeah, it wasn't an interception, but it still doesn't change the fact that it was a poor decision. That you know what I mean? Like, I understand that, like, sometimes these grading systems, it's like, it seems a little ridiculous when you have one guy who is clearly better than the other, but somehow the other guy gets graded higher. But, the point is, it's like, they do kind of take into account, the yards after the catch, the short, like I said yesterday, I'm not going to criticize a touchdown pass as a touchdown pass, but when you throw 5 touchdown passes and 4 of them or whatever it was come within the 5 yards, then you're like, all right, well, let's, if we're going to deep dive into this, or if you're going to sit here and try to tell me he's the greatest quarterback to ever step on the football field, well, I'm going to then kind of dive deep and be like, okay, well, and this is what I think Pro Football Focus does without the buy, or at least the motivation that I have to kind of disprove what other people are saying. But they'll sit there and say like, oh, okay, all right, well, let's see, 5 touchdown passes. Well, you had say you had 8 plays inside the 5-yard line in opponent's territory, and 7 of those you decided to throw the ball and not run the ball. Well, okay, to me that's a little stat patty. I get it, no big deal. Touchdowns are touchdowns. I'm not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to matter. But when you're sitting there in a vacuum talking about a week 1 performance and going on and on about how no one is close and this, that, and the other, and it's like at that point we had seen like half the league hadn't played yet. So like, all I'm saying is like let's not get too over the top, because like, to your point, like at the end of the year, I'm looking at it and I'm saying like, of the young quarterbacks, John, you have Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. Joe Burrow, again, went to the Super Bowl, so you're going to give him a little bit of credit there. But those guys, I mean, at the end of the year, any one of those guys would not shock me if you would sit there and say, oh, they're probably the best of those young group. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, if you're saying that about Joe Burrow by the end of the year, then obviously he's had a phenomenal year and it's completely white out that week 1. Obviously, Josh Allen doesn't, Josh Allen's a little bit closer to that. So is Justin Herbert. But to me, I'm looking at it like, I have no idea at the end of the year who's going to be the best quarterback, because some of the great things that people, like I said, go absolutely bananas over when it comes to Patrick Mahomes, I see Justin Herbert doing all the time.
Whoa, man, that touchdown pass that actually covered the spread.
Yeah.
What a throw. Holy crap. I mean, he puts balls in really tight areas. He's so accurate. I mean, I love doing comps, like this guy is this guy of the era. And I know you're not as big a fan of Dan Marino as I am. He did turn 61 yesterday, and you know what? He's got a vowel at the end of his name, so I've got to support him.
I like Dan Marino. I just think every year his aura, his legend has just inflated bigger than what it should be. Like, I mean, in 5 years, people are going to be like, yeah, Dan Marino would be throwing for 75 touchdowns and 8,000 yards in this era. And it's like, no, he wouldn't. Like, he was a great quarterback. And if anyone is the epitome of, unfortunately, not every great quarterback wins a Super Bowl, it would be him. But save me this legend upon legend stuff. Like, I mean, let's pump the brakes a little bit and look at his career.
I will say this: if people like to talk about Patrick Mahomes' first 4 years, check out Dan Marino's first 4 years, 83, 84, 85, 86, and put it into context what era he was playing in. I mean, his numbers stack up with Mahomes. Clearly, I mean, he won an MVP, went to a Super Bowl, did lose it, but he was throwing for 5,000 yards and 48 touchdown passes when it was like, what the hell is that? It was almost like Wayne Gretzky in hockey. You looked at his numbers from 1984 and said, that doesn't look real. But Herbert's probably of those guys the closest to Marino in terms of just this big guy that's in the pocket, that has a quick release, a strong arm, accurate. He moves better than Marino because Marino had some knee issues. Although Marino was like Brady in a sense, or Brady like Marino, that they worked so well in the pocket. Marino was a master at that, like just dancing inside the pocket without leaving the pocket. And that's a great trait to have as a quarterback. Yeah, I mean, to single out one guy and say, oh, this guy's clearly better than everyone else, I think is foolish. Now, his team has accomplished a lot. He's also playing for, I think, the best offensive mind in the sport. So, that doesn't hurt. And I think with Kansas City, and they're at a point now where, they've gone to 4 straight AFC championship games, they feel a little bit like the 90s Braves, like just wake us up when they're in at least the divisional round, and then we'll see where they're at. The other thing, too, is they abandon the run game way too much. And look, we all love quarterbacks, and we know it's a passing league, but they run the ball pretty effectively. Part of it because I think the other team lets them or thinks that that's the lesser of two evils, but they don't use it enough. They didn't do it in the Super Bowl against Tampa. Remember how effective they were running the ball? No. I mean, last year in the AFC Championship game, well, when they, it seemed like they settled for the game time field goal when a touchdown wins it for them, and they just kind of went stale on offense. But I remember early in that Super Bowl against Tampa, they were running the ball very effectively. Like, keep running it. If that's what they're going to give to you, go ahead and do it. And now you don't have Tyreek Hill, who gets you a lot of cheap yards, so you got to kind of matriculate down the field, and that's not easy to do.
His absence was very apparent yesterday.
Sure.
I know week one, everyone's like, oh, who cares about Tyreek Hill? Who needs Tyreek Hill? That offense was clearly lacking that element yesterday, and we saw it. And we talk about all these other players, nice players, Juju Smith-Schuster, nice player, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, nice player. They're not the game changer that Tyreek Hill can and usually was for the Chiefs, because like I said, none of those guys are going to take a pass 3 yards past the line of scrimmage and zigzag and turn it up the field 75 yards. Tyreek Hill will. And we talked about it yesterday. He turns a normal dump off pass into essentially a special teams punt return, where it's like there's 11 guys just chasing him, and more often than not, he has the advantage. So it was foolish to sit there and arrogantly say that, oh, Tyreek Hill doesn't, it doesn't matter. They can do whatever. See 5 games across 5 seasons, see how good he performed. Well, no, it's not about in a vacuum game by game. It's about an entire season. What's going to happen throughout these, like what happens next time San Diego? See, I did it again. San Diego, they're the Chargers. What happens the next time the Chargers go and face the Chiefs, knowing obviously that Tyreek Hill's not going to go there, knowing what they can do effectively? Like, I think they're going to have a better defensive game plan against this team, because eventually teams are going to be like, all right, well, as long as we don't let Travis Kelce beat us. How do you see this Chiefs team consistently winning games outside, or you know what I mean, like doing what they were doing before, were dominating on offense outside of teams playing foolishly, i.e. the Cardinals, and blitzing 58% of the time?
Yep, exactly. Or if you're going up against Kansas City and you got Derwin James, you could just pick him up and body slam him, which was,
that was great. That was
pretty impressive.
That was a great spine buster.
Love that player. I mean, I've said it, the Chargers are my favorite AFC team. There's so many players on that team. I love Herbert, obviously. Derwin James, Khalil Mack. I mean, they got so many really, really good players, but they always seem to find a way to lose in some weird fashion. And last night, the big play, of course, the 99-yard pick six, which just flipped the game on its heels. But they're going to battle Kansas City. The Raiders are good. I think the Broncos should be okay. Tough division without question. But I think that I don't like. Look, I like absolutes in a sense because I'm like into lists and doing all of that stuff. But that's more on historical stuff. Like, okay, Brady's the greatest quarterback ever, followed by Montana and Manning and Elway, whatever. That's my list. But for the guys that are in their fourth or fifth year, and I don't know when separated themselves right now. I mean, Mahomes is outstanding without question. But I mean, maybe he is the best quarterback in the AFC. Maybe he is. But is he that much better than Herbert and Allen and Burrow and Lamar? Lamar gets disrespected quite a bit, right? I mean, look at his win-loss record.
Yeah.
I mean, he does it differently than those guys. He's not the pocket passer those guys are, but gets the job done.
Well, and that's kind of the ironic thing is because people get enamored over different, and different doesn't mean better. And by that I mean like people get and it always surprises me how much people go bonkers over a baseball player throwing like a baseball player. Like,
True.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Everyone's like, oh my God, look at Patrick. Well, he's a effing baseball player. So he throws like that. Like you see shortstops and second basemen do that 18 times a game. You know what I mean? The open face kind of huck the ball. And it's like, okay, that's impressive. I'm not saying it's not, but like the problem, and again, this goes back to how we view and how we judge quarterback play and everything like that. The problem is, people see that and they're like, "Oh my God, that's better." No, it's different. It's not better. Like that touchdown pass that Patrick Mahomes threw, the nice one, the little sidearm shot. That was great. Nice little scramble, everything like that. You can do that without doing any of that. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of just it's garnish. At the end of the day, it's garnish. Because but people love it. They see it and they're like, oh my God, no one can do what Patrick Mahomes does, completely ignoring the fact that Justin Herbert's doing the exact same thing on the other side of the field.
Right.
But
he's bigger, he's taller, and it maybe doesn't look as cool, right? And the other thing too is like I just compared Herbert to Marino. To me, Mahomes is Favre.
Oh, sure.
Like Favre used to do some crazy stuff, and that's the thing that I get turned up. Oh, we've never seen this before. I'm like, yeah, we did. I saw it with Brett Favre. I saw it with Franz Hockenson, who was smaller, and his comp today is probably Russell Wilson, little guy running around making plays. So I remember Aaron Rodgers, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, when everyone was going nuts over Mahomes, and he said, "Yeah, I've done the same passes he's done, and I've seen Matt Stafford do it too." It's not a new thing.
I almost lost it yesterday, John, during the broadcast, and this is how funky it is because I almost went to Twitter to defend Aaron Rodgers, like. Please
do. You secretly have a love affair with him. You do.
I like. Look, if it weren't for this outrageous like need to want to put him and elevate him over Brady, I would have no problem with Aaron Rodgers. But I have to keep defending my guy when it's necessary. So sometimes it comes across as me being a little, let's say, prickly towards Mr. Ayahuasca. But no, they said on the Kirk Herbstreit said on the broadcast yesterday, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like. Mahomes was trying to draw them off sides or whatever. I think it was late in the first half. And he said something along the lines of like, no one is better in the league at this or something like that. And I'm like, I'm sitting here.
I remember that.
I was like, that's absurd because I mean, clearly Aaron Rodgers is, and Aaron Rodgers is the best at max and taking advantage of getting those players to jump off sides. Like that's his thing. That's so don't sit there and tell me.
It's like the move, right? Yeah, it's like the move in Seinfeld. That's my thing.
Stop short. No, but I'm sitting here thinking like that's absurd. And like, and this is kind of like what we get with Patrick Mahomes. It's like everything he does is somehow the greatest or the first to ever do it, and it's just not true. And that's my frustrating. That's why I get frustrated with the coverage of him, because like I'd like to appreciate his play, because it's like, oh yeah, he's fun to watch, absolutely. But don't sit there and tell me that he is the best at drawing people off sides and taking advantage of free plays when Aaron Rodgers is still playing this football in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like who's clearly better at that and is been better at that for years. So I almost did it, John, but then I was sitting on the couch. I was like,
I wish you did. I wish you did. Well, again, Herb Street's been watching college football too much, so now he's watching the NFL. Yeah. So, he's got to kind of catch up on these things. I actually thought he was pretty good, Herb Street. I think
the broadcast was really fun. I took umbrage with that comment. I thought that was.
I did too. Too. Yeah, no, and I'm surprised I didn't tweet out, but I don't know if I could tweet and watch the thing at the same time on my phone. But it was kind of he does get to the point where they go over, but we know he's a great quarterback. We don't have to exaggerate it. I think that's kind of the overall point, right? We can see if this guy is special.
Exaggerated.
Exactly.
Because it's like, yesterday he was okay. He was okay.
Solid game, I thought. They won,
solid
which is important. Yep.
Again, I mentioned the drop interceptions at the end. They don't count on the stat sheet, but the reason they get brought up is because people at the end of the day will completely ignore and say oh, well, he was amazing, he did this, he did that. And it's like, no, I mean, he can have a really good game and not be amazing, or he can do these things and it could not be the greatest to ever do it. It's just to this point, it just seems a little just too much, over the top. And again, I hope, John, at the end of the day, though, and this is what I worry when it comes to real world stuff, that these narratives are fine now, because people have their own narratives in their head about everything. It is what it is. You're not going to change some people's mind. However, sometimes these narratives leak into the voting, and all of a sudden, like I was saying yesterday, there's a campaign. There's going to be a campaign for Patrick Mahomes, right? Yeah, Nick Wright's probably up there already now talking about how last night was probably sneakily one of the best games Patrick Mahomes has ever played. You can guarantee that's along the lines of what he's doing. And there's going to be people that buy into it, whether it's voters who don't necessarily pay attention or care, or just the fans. And eventually that momentum is going to build to where we're looking at two quarterbacks that might be doing the same thing, but Patrick Mahomes is going to be considered 10 times better because of, again, this idea that only he does these things that every quarterback does. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
right, yeah, that he's a one-off. He's a unicorn. I see that in basketball too. Steph Curry, I think, is the greatest shooter ever, but he's not lapping the field. I mean, there's other great shooters in the NBA, and I saw a lot of them that are now retired, whether it's Ray Allen or Larry Bird or Reggie Miller. I mean, there's all sorts of guys that were phenomenal shooters as well. But again, people just get a hold of something, and it's almost like a dog with a toy. They just don't let go, and they just keep pounding that.
That's what we saw last weekend. People were just running away. I mean, in the third quarter, people are like, "Oh, Mahomes is wrapping up this MVP." I'm like, it's we haven't even finished week one. Like, come on, guys. Like, I understand. Like, it's exciting to watch him play. I get it. But if you took the same approach with some of these other younger guys, like I said, I'm watching Justin, a lot of those same things. We see, to his credit, Matt Stafford has been throwing no-look passes for quite some time. Mahomes didn't invent that. And I think the lazy talking points have led us down a road where, you don't necessarily need to be accurate. You just need to be dramatic and kind of over the top with hyperbole. And then it's fine. That's today's commentary, which is, again, it's frustrating because that's when you get more narrative versus reality. Because, again, you're seeing Patrick Mahomes, there's a play where the penalty that they didn't call a penalty, or it was on Joey Bosa, but he kind of got pulled into it, whatever. And people are talking about it, and we see it all the time, John. It's not just with Patrick Mahomes, but with anyone. People will run to Twitter and say, if that was Tom Brady. And my response is, how many roughing the passer penalties has he been the beneficiary of over the last few years? And I'll tell you,
I think it's two, right?
It's two.
Yeah.
Yes. There's been 2 seasons in the last 5 where he's had 0. So again, but everyone will say that. And even commentators on national television will be like, well, special treatment, guys like Brady, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, Okay, Brady has a reputation of getting all the calls and always complaining to referees. Well, what did I see yesterday? I saw Patrick Mahomes constantly complaining and giving kind of that weird, like, come on, look, type of thing, and then getting calls. So, but again, people run to Twitter and will sit there and say, well, if it was Tom Brady, you wouldn't get the call. First of all, he
Right.
wouldn't put himself in a position to be running around and take bad hits like that. And second, he just doesn't get calls. As crazy as it sounds, he doesn't. So narrative.
The thing with Brady, smart enough to get rid of the ball before there's someone near him. Sure. I mean, Peyton Manning. People used to criticize Peyton Manning for just dropping down. I'm like, no, that's smart. Like we don't need to have Peyton Manning. And there was some criticism of Justin Herbert on the pick six. Like, why didn't he lay out the linebacker? Well, because we don't want to lose the guy for the 4 months. Like the loss last night, you can make up. You can't come back from Justin Herbert trying to be a hero like Baker Mayfield last year. I'm going to make the tackle because I'm the macho quarterback, and then getting himself injured and actually costing himself millions of dollars. He continued to play and play poorly, and Cleveland moved on from him without question. I mean, where was the outcry that, was it roughing the passer on Herbert on the play where he hurt his ribs? Probably not, but that's something I've seen called before.
Yeah, it looked like he kind of...
He kind of landed on the helmet of the defender more than anything. Yeah, so
it felt like
I don't think it should have been called.
Yeah,
but that's something I've seen called before. In fact, I think they called it against Clay Matthews when Green Bay tied Minnesota back in 2018. I kind of remember these things, unfortunately. But it cost the Packers a win in that game, which didn't matter. They make the playoffs anyway.
Well, people are, again, talking about officiating and, the Charger or the Chiefs got screwed. Well, it's like, no, they also benefited from a pretty poor holding call or whatever they wanted. That gave them another opportunity, which would have been another 3 and out or non-point possession. So yeah, I mean, I guess the point is just kind of continuing to point out how, how we cover the football and how we hear and listen about the stories within the stories. It's not really necessarily based in reality. So when people come out there and react and sit there and say, oh, well, we've never seen a start as good as Patrick Mahomes, and I sit there and I roll my eyes and I'm like, yes, we have. We've seen comparable. We've seen other players have great success early in their career. It doesn't always have to be the best thing that we've ever seen since the last best thing. So, but we'll see. We'll see how it plays out throughout the season. So far, I think, I'd like to see a pretty big game from some of these other guys, even Josh Allen and guys like Brady, maybe even Rodgers bounces back this week to kind of muddy that MVP field. And I just say MVP because that's generally what the discussion is going to come down to at the end of the season with these quarterbacks, because of the same guys that are going to be in this discussion. And therefore this discussion is relevant now as it will be 8-10 weeks from now when that race actually starts to heat up, But anyway,
and Russell Wilson at some point will have a couple of good weeks, and people will talk about him being the MVP front runner, and he won't even get a vote by the end of the year.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Let's just say last week was not as inspiring as I thought it was going to be. So, all right, we got about 14 minutes left or so, maybe a little bit less. It's time to give our game picks because that's what we do here on FPC Radio during the NFL season. We go game by game and picks. Make our picks. I was 8-7-1 in week 1. I had fallen to 8-8 because I did pick the Chargers yesterday, and I was almost right. But we are going to hopefully do a lot better this week because last week I picked some duds. So let's jump into it. You talked about Baker Mayfield. Well, he and the Carolina Panthers are heading to face the New York Football Giants, the 1-0 New York Football Giants. Up in Meadowlands, of course, or is that what they call it nowadays? I don't even know. But I took the Giants in this one. I think they're going to kind of ride that momentum from the win. They're at home. The Panthers, again, they're boom or bust. They're Baker Mayfield. You're going to get some great plays out of Baker Mayfield. A 75-yard touchdown pass. All of a sudden, oh, Baker, number 1 overall pick. But you're also going to get very mediocre to bad quarterback play. And you're going to get mediocre to bad play from the Panthers. And I think the Giants, I think they're going to eke this one out. It's not going to be anything pretty, but give me the Giants in this one.
Love the Giants in this game. pick them to win over 7 games. I think they're going to finish second in the division. They could be like a long shot to win the division. I mean, that's a lot to throw out there after just 1 week. But they've been drafting pretty well. Daniel Jones, again, had a good rookie year, 2 bad years, and now I think he looks better under Brian Daboll, who absolutely is doing a great job at the Giants. I know it's just 1 game, but the players love him, and that's an important part of football. So I like the Giants on Sunday.
Next, we have the Patriots heading to Pittsburgh, and I'm assuming Mac Jones will be playing. He was roughed up a little bit of a back injury. This is a tough one. Like, I mean, Pittsburgh, I don't know how they ended up ultimately winning that game, even though if you were to tell me they picked off Joe Burrow 4 times and they still somehow eked out a win, it's a confusing and kind of the epitome of Pittsburgh, because I think they have some nice players. I'm not so sure about their quarterback. This is a little bit of a homer pick, I guess. I'm going to go with the Patriots. I don't have any good reason. Let's put it that way. But I do think, they tend to handle Pittsburgh pretty well, regardless of what the situation is. So I think this is going to be kind of one of those ugly, low-scoring games where I think the Patriots are going to eke it out. But I'm not. My confidence is not high in this one.
Feels like a 16-13 game, doesn't it? Feels like a game
yeah.
like right out of like 1977 where no one can score.
12, something weird. There's
A weird number, yeah. There'll be a safety involved, or there'll be something crazy involved because the defenses are better than the offenses. I like Pittsburgh. I think Brian Flores being on the coaching staff will help Pittsburgh at some point. We see what he did when he was with Miami as the head coach, and I think he's got a pretty important role with the Steelers. But this is like a toss-up game to say the least. But I'll go with Pittsburgh just to be different.
Atlanta heading to Los Angeles. I think the Rams bounce back. Atlanta's they're the Falcons. I don't place them too highly up, but I think the Rams, after 10 days off of the opening night beatdown that they received, I think they're going to bounce back pretty nicely. So give me the Rams in this one.
Agree wholeheartedly.
Well, there you go. Good. Well, next we have Cincinnati, another team that needs to bounce back, heading to Dallas, and I think they, excuse me, very, very comfortably get that bounce back, because I think Dallas is in a world of hurt right now. And I just think the Bengals, I mean, you can't, as much as I was disappointed with Joe Burrow, I can't expect him to do that again. So give me the Bengals.
He'll bounce back. I like the Bengals. The Cowboys are all banged up. The interesting matchup, if they go mano-a-mano, will be Jamar Chase against Tavon Diggs, because there's just going to be like spectacular plays, good or bad for both. More so good for Jamar Chase. He's that good, but I like the Bengals.
All right, next we have an intriguing matchup, Minnesota at Philadelphia, 2-1-0 NFC teams. You're pretty high on Philadelphia. Giving up 35 points to the Lions is a bit concerning. I do like Minnesota in this one. I like them to jump out to 2-0 and maybe put a little bit of pressure on your Packers. So give me the Vikings on the road in this one.
I think both of these teams are headed for the playoffs. I think Philly wins that division. Minnesota's a wild card. They may win the North. I mean, they've got plenty of talent, but I like Philadelphia in this game. It's a standalone primetime type game, and we know Kirk Cousins doesn't do well in those, so I'll take Philadelphia at home to beat the Vikings.
Next, we have Miami heading to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. I like the Ravens in this one. Again, Miami, some nice pieces. I just don't like the quarterback. I'll take Lamar Jackson 100 times out of 100 over Tua, and Lamar Jackson over quite a number of other quarterbacks too. So Ravens take this one at home.
I agree. The Ravens are the better team, better quarterback. And every time I see Tua throw the football, it just reminds me of like the punt, pass, and kick contest where the kid's like 12 and he has to run up to the line to throw it. Like, it just doesn't look natural coming out of his hands. Yeah, give me Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in their home opener.
Perhaps the biggest game of the week outside of Thursday Night Football is Tampa Bay heading to New Orleans, mostly because Tampa has struggled with the Saints. And the Saints are coming off a pretty impressive come-from-behind victory last week. Look, I mean, I don't think I was very impressed with the Buccaneers defense. I think they need to throw the ball more on offense if you want to score more than 19 points a game. And I think this is the week they finally get over that hurdle against New Orleans. So give me the Buccaneers in this one.
Yeah, I like Tampa as well. I think, how many teams can say that they've had Tom Brady's number, and he's played well against them in several of those games, and most importantly, he beat them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's his one win since he went to Tampa over New Orleans. But give me Tampa, even though the game's on the road. I like them.
Next, we have Indianapolis at Jacksonville. Side note, Matt Ryan's 60,000-yard passing touchdown football went into the Hall of Fame. You know what number it is?
What number it is?
Yeah, what number the ball is on the ball for going into the Hall of Fame? 283. How about that?
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Sometimes just fate. It's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing. But
poor Matt Ryan. He needs an exorcism at some point. But and we like him, right? We both like Matt Ryan. Good quarterback. Seems like a likable guy.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
It's a weird game because the Colts tied the Texans last week, right? Which was kind of a surprise.
Well, I think the Colts. I don't know. I don't know what to make of the Colts, but I actually have Jacksonville winning this game at home. I think it would be right for an upset, and I'm feeling some Jacksonville this week. So plus I have Travis Etienne on my fantasy football team, and I really, really, really need a big outing from some of my guys, and hopefully he's one of them. So give me Jacksonville in this one.
I'll agree with you on that. They played pretty well for 3.5 quarters at Washington. I thought they'd pull that upset against the Commanders. And they always play the Colts tough. The Colts always struggle in Jacksonville. They had a chance to make the playoffs last year and they blew it. So, yeah, I'll go with Jacksonville. They're not the worst team in football. Let's put it that way. I guess that's something to strive for.
Yeah. It's pretty. Who is the worst team in football right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Dallas is trending in that direction. I know that's going to probably get everybody irritated. The Jets have some talent. The Lions aren't as bad as they've been. I'm trying to pick on who the worst team in football is. Maybe it's the Cardinals. I know when neither one of us are fans of the Cardinals. So until they get, they're still not that bad. Yeah.
To be fair, there isn't a clear-cut worst team in the league, which is
not yet.
Which is a good thing. Yeah. I mean, give it some time.
Right.
Again, we're all giving Zach Wilson the benefit of the doubt, but if he's just another Jets quarterback dud, then hey, same old Jets, circa 1963. So, anyways, Houston, as we just mentioned, or you just mentioned, is heading to Denver to take on Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, in the Mile High City. I begrudgingly choose the Broncos to win this game. So I was trying to come up with a reason why I could believe the Houston Texans could win this game, and I just don't think that's going to happen. I was very pleased with how underwhelming the Broncos were in week one. I don't think this will be the case this week. I do think Denver's going to pull it off. So give me the Broncos.
Yeah, I'll go with that, and Wilson will probably
Let's ride, John. Let's ride.
Let's ride, yes.
Let's ride.
Go Hawk. Let's ride, Mr. Unlimited. If he's Mr. Unlimited, then Tua is Mr. Limited, right? Can we agree on that?
Well, like I said, I don't want to get into a whole rant about Russell Wilson, so I'll just leave it at that. So
yeah, we'll just leave it at that. Like, how about them Red Sox?
How about them? Right.
Yeah, how about that weather we've been having? I'll go with I'll go with Denver in this one. But some of the reports coming out of Denver and Russell Wilson's exit out of Seattle and the reaction to a lot of his former teammates to him losing that game on Monday night are priceless. Yeah, Denver's better than Houston. They should win. Next,
we got Chicago taking on your Packers. The Packers, I mean, what a great opportunity for a bounce back. I mean, I always kind of joke whenever, this is to a segment of Aaron Rodgers fans that, again, to the top and try to elevate him high. They always, whenever there's always a highlight package, there's only like 3 highlights that are ever shown. It's always against the Bears or the Lions, which I kind of chuckle at. Again, the narrative I'm just saying the narrative has always been that Tom Brady says the easiest path in his division. Well, again, narratives aren't always reality, but this is a great opportunity for Green Bay at home to bounce back against a divisional opponent. I tried to figure out a reason why I could pick the Bears, but I can't. I don't know enough about their quarterback. I don't know enough about what they are as or who they are as a team. So I'm definitely taking the Packers in this one.
Yeah, it looks like a blowout. It's a Sunday night game, So, this would be the second straight Sunday night dud. Obviously you put Brady in week 1 against the Cowboys. You have this legacy matchup with Rodgers against the Bears, who he does own. But yeah, the Packers should win this one handily. If they don't, then they've got some issues.
Yeah. Then on Monday, we will be very much dedicated to talking about the Packers and some of their issues if they lose this game, because losing to Minnesota on opening week, even as bad as it was, it is what it is. You know what I mean? You can get past that. They go out and go back to back, and it's I'll throw this in. If it's some of the same issues we saw, especially offensively, then you get concerned. Then you're like, okay, maybe there is a problem, a long-term issue brewing here. So,
yeah.
All right, last couple games. We have 3 left for Sunday. We'll save the Monday nights for, Monday. The Jets head to Cleveland in a I just don't care about game. I really don't. I mean, who cares about Jacoby Brissett versus Joe Flacco? You know what I mean? I just don't care. But I did care enough to pick the Cleveland Browns because I don't think I've ever picked the Jets my entire life. So go Cleveland.
I'm going to pick the Jets in an upset. My upset special of the week. Go Jets, go. I'm waiting for the announcer of the game to say, a rematch of the 1986 divisional round between the Jets and Cleveland, because they haven't done much since. I'll go with the Jets because there's always one game that doesn't make much sense, and maybe this is the one.
Next, we have Detroit hosting the Washington Commanders. I think this is going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring back and forth, and I think Washington's going to pull it out. So give me the Commanders.
Yeah, top 2 picks from the 2016 draft, right? Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, who have moved on to, in the case of Wentz, his 3rd team, and now Goff with his 2nd team. Yeah, it could be a fun game. This is the first time in 24 games that the Lions are actually the betting favorite. I mean, that's incredible. I love the Lions in this game. I thought they played pretty well against Philadelphia, and I think they'll get their first win of the season on Sunday.
So there you go. And last but not least, Seattle at San Francisco. Normally a game that is always full of headlines. Might be a little bit different now with different quarterbacks, different projections for each team. But Seattle's coming off a win and San Francisco's coming off a pretty big loss. But I do like the 49ers at home to eke out a win. And maybe we'll get a better look at Trey Lance, the quarterback, in a more favorable weather setting.
Yeah, without question. I mean, San Francisco should bounce back. Emotional win by Seattle on Monday night, shorter week. San Francisco should be able to handle them.
Just like we handled the show today to close out the week. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. That's going to do it for us here today. We will be back, obviously, on Monday, but tune in Sunday morning for our Full Press NFL Sunday and, of course, our Full Press Fantasy Football live show to preview everything happening and all that fun stuff. So thank you, everyone. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live, at Full Press Radio. I am at IGLEN31. And, of course, John is at JohnSapp25. So have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. And we will